today, Bram. So like both of us come from a military background, and so the purpose of today's conversation is just about allowing and supporting military servicemen or ex-servicemen coming into IT. So in terms of sort of getting into this, how did you get into IT straight from the military?
I was always on the operational side while being in the army, so I spent a lot of time in the Middle East, Afghanistan, Africa, and there I've met a lot of people. And when it comes down to changing roles, it often comes down to networking and meeting people and asking people what to do next. So at a certain moment in my career, I met a former US Ranger officer who already joined IBM several years before, who asked me if I want to join his team as military expert for NATO projects, which at that time, family-wise, was an excellent choice for me. So I joined IBM as a military expert, first as an advisor to major projects. Then after a couple of months, I took over the biggest project, several projects, became a program. I lifted up to the level of the NATO account. I became the NATO account executive for IBM. And like that, with all the leadership skills that you develop in the army, you apply them in the civil world, in private industry, and you can be pretty successful. So after 2 years, I moved to the IBM global team, where I was the military expert of the global public sector team. And then you advise projects from Australia to Japan to the US to Canada, always with the same angle from bringing technology to the boots on the ground. I'm a very operational minded person, and that's our added value, that industry expertise, these insights that we need to bring the technology and to develop the right technology so it's extremely useful for the soldiers on the ground.
Fantastic. I mean, sort of my experience, so I left the army at 18, 19 and become a reservist. And I think what reservists have to offer IT is firstly discipline. You probably remember getting up at 5 a.m, doing some phys or physical exercise, running around. And yeah, a big thing for me, like I said, motivation for parallel is pushing really what military servicemen have to offer into the IT world. So I do contract recruitment in Belgium, and I work with some of the biggest consultancies in Belgium. And a big thing for me now is helping the Belgian veterans, but also UK military veterans get into IT in Europe and also the UK. But coming on to sort of the next sort of question, this is a very good question that one of my colleagues helped me, right? So what support do you think we as employers or our clients should offer military personnel to get into IT?
The transition from the military to the private world, and for sure in a high-speed environment, high-paced environment like technology industry, can be brutal. You absolutely have no clue where you step into. So I see the recruiters and the headhunters as a part of consultants and advice what to do, what are the things to avoid, how do you present yourself, because in my experience, at least in Belgium and in Western Europe, actually, veterans are a huge pool of talent which is barely touched by industry currently, and that has several reasons. Their CVs are often not understood by civilian recruiters. They don't see the added value of certain actions that we did or operations that we did in the past or leadership positions.
Yeah.
Another thing is that I think recruiters have to translate between certificates that you get in the army and civilian degrees, because it's different words. So the tools selecting CVs don't pick up the CVs of veterans often, while these people have so much experience operational. They're exposed to pressure, to stress. They know team building. You mentioned discipline yourself, consistency. They're extremely team focused, mission driven. Often also technology focused, because when you're deployed, technology can make the difference between life and death, really. So all these aspects, veterans are extremely equipped for it. They're prepared for it, but their skills often do not translate to things that civilian recruiters recognize. If you have a CV and you have to match it to a job description, it's often not a mismatch. It's often a mismatch. So I see recruiters and headhunters a perfect game, a perfect role in them to be the facilitators, the translators, and then let's use that unexploited pool of talent to fill the talent gap which exists currently in the tech industry. So extremely important.
I mean, I completely agree. I think So a big thing in the UK currently, obviously with the pullout in Afghanistan last year of the rest of ISAF and NATO forces, we saw sort of a rise in a lot of veterans with sort of mental health problems and issues becoming of that. And I think a big thing for me with that kind of stuff is supporting these guys. Obviously, I'm not a qualified medical professional, but supporting these guys through giving them work and something to do, because a lot of the guys at my family who have left the army as well, what they were left with when they got to civvy street or the civilian world was they had stuff to do every day. Your week was filled with tasks and missions and so on and so forth, and sort of filling that void through work. Now, a big thing for me that I think that IT companies should offer is sort of veteran entry schemes. We have grad schemes in companies, and I think now we should have veteran schemes parallel to that. I think what I'm looking to offer and Parallel's looking to offer is CV writing lessons, for instance. Like you mentioned there, veterans will write CVs in a very military way, which I can read and yourself can read, but someone who's come out with a master's degree in computer science might struggle to read. So really bridging that gap, as you say, and Parallel is going to start to offer CV writing advice myself to these guys. And just sort of coming on to your work at Microsoft, what is it you're sort of doing? I know you're doing some probably government stuff, which you might not be able to talk about, but what is your sort of basic job role in Microsoft?
So I was extremely happy when I got this position at Microsoft, to be honest, because for me, it is on the path. I mean, we're mission driven. We all have our personal goal in life. And my personal goal is, like I said, bring the right technology to the boots on the ground. And that's based on experience I had myself in the Middle East, when we didn't have the right tools, outdated equipment, and non-functional technology, while we had to do missions which were life-endangering. So that's my mission. And then when I'm leaving the army, I said, okay, now I'm not in boots anymore. I'm still an active reserve officer, but and I'm helping on the side by planning and by mentoring. But how can I support that mission? And then Microsoft came on the radar because they have a very clear vision about how defense should transform to the future, and how all these civilian developed solutions and technologies benefit actually our soldiers on the ground. So in the past, you also know you had the defense world and you had the real world, and there was actually you were living in an island, you were living in your own world, you were deployed with your soldiers, you lived 24/7 with them, and you were barely connected to the civilian world out of your area of operation. That's changed drastically over the last 10 years. You have all civilian military collaborations everywhere. Cybersecurity is another aspect where there is no difference between a civilian target or a military target, because a lot of assets are dual use in cybersecurity. And think about servers, satellites, communication systems, cell phones. They're all civilian assets which can be targeted by military actions. So the gray zone between civilian and military, actually the two worlds merged, which is a challenge for the military and for soldiers, because our world in which we operate get way more complex. The fog of war became way bigger, because, okay, how do you identify a target? Yes, no, who is attacking you? Yes, no, are you attacked by cyber? You even don't know sometimes. Sometimes things appear on social media. Sometimes you don't have any impact on what happens around you. So the advantage is companies like Microsoft, they have such a huge, big footprint. They have really next generation technology and solutions, which are benefiting to sectors like, for example, critical infrastructure, to government agencies already, to ports, airports, maritime industry. And all these solutions are extremely useful also for the military. Because if a company has to defend its critical infrastructure, for example, electric grids, for example, or nuclear power plants, they apply exactly the same procedures and processes that we were applying in the army to defend something, to protect something, to fix a target, to make sure that it's shielded, to camouflage things. So all these things are very familiar in the army as in industry. Well, how I have my own role, I'm currently European leader, Western European leader for everything with defense and intelligence, which makes me responsible for all the activities of Microsoft in Europe, which means that I support accounts in all the countries in Europe who develop technology and implement technology to the benefit of our soldiers and military on the boots on the ground. What makes me successful, I think what I can say what makes me successful is that I have the operational understanding. I know why we do it. And it's very important that everybody understands obviously what we do and how do we do things. And that's all technical, and what we do are the products and the services and solutions. But what is even more important is to have someone on board who can explain you why you actually do it. And why is very clear. We talk about lives. For example, if Microsoft develops, I just figure something out, an application to support medical evacuations during operations, you know that every second, every minute is crucial for someone's life. Well, then it's me who understands the value because I lived these experiences myself. And with me, all the other veterans in all our accounts as well. So what we do currently is we have a strong veteran community in Microsoft. We actively hire these people because of these experiences that they have. And the step from, for example, security to cybersecurity is extremely small because you apply the same processes, the same methodologies, the same procedures. You know what is an alert, how to react in case of an alert, how to escalate alerts, what are the procedures and the drills you need to do to limit a certain impact. How do you find the right resources to solve an issue? Well, all these drills, well, you trained it for years, you probably experienced during operations. It's exactly the same as what we do in Microsoft with our cybersecurity teams. Obviously, what we do is way broader in cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is now very visible due to the war in Ukraine, for example. The importance is there. We are very vulnerable, but Microsoft steps up mainly with former military teams to help and to support. But we think way broader. We all know the army is sometimes outdated. Often you work with legacy systems.
Yeah.
You know, you're always busy, but sometimes it's just keeping you busy. You have to wait long for suddenly a lot of action.
Yeah.
So
Hurry up and wait. Yeah.
that asks a lot of transformation and modernization of our armed forces. So I touched cybersecurity. I touched development of what we call business applications to make the operations more efficient. But the third thing that we are doing are transformational actions, really deep transforming the armies, or we try to help them in their transformation, to transform them to a modern, like industry 4.0. Well, actually, we need also a military 4.0, which is all connected, all digital, using all the assets, developing very fast new applications, new systems, new procedures to quickly adapt to a very rapidly changing world and environment around you. And that's actually what we need, because we won't be able to keep, we don't have them actually, the huge armies of the 80s, the 70s during the Cold War. Well, no, now we need to create the same impact, but with only 10% of the workforce that we had in the past. So I see technology and what we do as an accelerator and a tool to enlarge the impact of what we do as a soldier on the ground. It's by interconnected systems with airplanes, with ships, with the boots on the ground, with the forward air controller, with the medics. That's what we do. And that's how I do my role.
Perfect. Yeah, no, and I think obviously you touched on Microsoft has a large community of veterans, almost like a support network, if you like. And I think that sounds like a good blueprint for IT companies across Europe. Like you mentioned, we've got the armies of the 80s. I mean, I dare I say I wasn't born in the 80s, but the armies of the 80s and the armies of sort of having 100. I mean, the UK forces now sit below 100,000 servicemen with a number of ex-servicemen and reservists on top of that. And as we see with companies now, we're now moving into a more technology-focused military, and also the threat is more cyber focused, as we've seen from China and Russia in the past, and currently with the cyber threat that they're posing to NATO and other European nations. Companies like Microsoft and others are important to sort of defend both NATO and European countries from this threat. And I think the last question I have is what challenges do ex-servicemen face sort of when coming back to work? We've talked about what employers can offer, but obviously you're being an ex-serviceman yourself and a little bit myself, what kind of challenges do you think they face coming into the workplace?
I told you in the beginning that the transition can be brutal.
Yeah.
And there are several reasons for that. One is we come from a public sector and we work for the greater benefit of the good. We try to accomplish a mission. And first of all, when you work to industry, nobody's going to tell you what is your mission. You need to identify your mission yourself. That is asking some moments of reflection to think about, okay, what and how am I going to do that? That's one. Second, industry is business. I mean, it's not about the profit. It's about you need to make money because you need to be able to pay your people. You need to be developing new things. You need to keep your shareholders happy. You need to grow as a team, as a company. And as a military, we don't often have that financial reflex. Okay, we are used to honestly spend tax money, but we don't have to think about how we get that money. And that's one of the key drivers in business, because you constantly have to build business cases for everything what you want to do. For example, just going to give a random number. If I hire you and I want to pay you 100,000 euro a year, it's a nice salary if you come from the army, fantastic. Yeah. Then you have to realize that 100,000 euro needs to be made on top of projects and products which have also their price. So if you have a margin of like 10% on, that means that if I hire you, you need to make me 1,100,000 euro. How are you gonna bring more than 1 million to our company now to make that difference? So you really have to think in terms of, okay, what's the added value that I bring? What's the financial added value? Because with that added value, I'm paying my own salary. And that's a reflex that we don't have. Another thing is we are trained in certain things of management with leadership, and that's all perfect. But management of industry teams is way different. Why? If we command soldiers in the field, it's clear. Guys, this is your mission, this is your target, these are your actions to take, go. And you even don't question that there will be one soldier in your team saying, no, don't feel like. No, because as a mission, we will do so. In industry, it's different. Everybody has his agenda, everybody has his feelings, everybody has his thoughts, everybody has his interest to certain things. Which means that if you have 40 people in front of you and you have a certain project, it's not by all sure that everybody has the same or is aligned to do it the way that you think they want to do it. That means you always have to look for congruent interests. Why are we going to do it? How are we going to do it? Does everyone agree with it? So it requires much more diplomatic skills than in the army. The army, you don't need diplomatic skills, not too much anyway, to get things done. So that are the main challenges, the financial mindset, economic drivers. Another thing, what I think as a challenge is, I think I also wrote it in my post, I think, you need a good mentor, a good coach, and a good manager. Absolutely crucial to be successful. A mentor is someone who walked the road before, who knows what happens, who's going to help you with the tips and tricks. Don't do that and do that. Learn this, focus on that, take that course, go there on a training. That's how you do. A coach is someone who's walking next to you and lives day by day, trains you actually more in the habits that you need to do. I know we're disciplined and we woke up at 5 to be there. Well, in industry, you have other disciplines that you need to do. I need to take that course myself. Nobody's going to tell you, but in 2 days, you stand in front of a public, an audience, and you need to talk about it. You don't want to go with your face on the ground. It's discipline to train yourself. A coach helps you with that. And then the importance of a manager. You know, in the army, if you have a good officer or a bad officer in front of you, it makes a world of difference. Yeah. But at the end, he's not going to break your career often, because officers, they roll out after 2-3 years, and then you get another one, and new life. I know in platoons have often 10, 15 different officers in 20 years, whatever, that's fine.
Yeah.
A manager really can make or break your career, literally. And not just your career, also your financial situation, because part of your salary is often paid on bonus or variable salary. So at the end of the year, your manager is going to look at you. How much did he bring to my team? What's added value? Yes, no. And sometimes your variable can go up to 40, 50% of your salary. That means in summertime, you're going to have a great summer, or it's going to be a difficult summer for you. So he also going to send you on courses. He's going to talk positive about you, because, and that's, I think, the last item that I want to bring to this question is, everything is only successful if you have a great and nurture your great brand and the perception that people have of you. Perception is not a lie. Perception is the visualization of what you do. So you have to promote your own actions. You have to talk about it. You have to visualize it. You have to make sure that people see what you do. A manager is helping you with that, because he's telling your achievements to other managers, to the leadership, to clients, to customers, and that's what you need. From yourself, first of all, of course, you need to do a good job. That's one thing. But second, and very important, is you have always to act integer and ethical. So there can be no spot or stain on your brand. So working about your brand, promoting it, explaining it, showing it, helping others. That's what I also try to do with other veterans, obviously, who come to me for questions or look for change in their situation. Help people, they will help you. So that's a lot of challenges, but as you see, like yourself, many people are very successful in it, thanks to how we are trained, and thanks to our mindset.
No, I completely agree. I think so. Just to round off, my experience is, like you said, a big thing for me. So when I joined, I was a teenager, staying in bed till 11 o'clock in the morning. And you mentioned about leadership. So yeah, I've had experience of good officers. I've had experience of great officers. I've had experience of terrible officers. But a big thing for me is people management. Obviously, I believe you're an officer in the military yourself. You sound like a good officer, dare I say so, or a great officer. So I think, thanks for your time on this, Bram. Because like I said, for me personally, I've met with a lot of veterans, I've met with a lot of serving soldiers, and the big problem that we have at the moment across the militaries across the world is that transition into civvy life. So anything I can do in yourself, it sounds like it to help. It's a good idea. So look, I think I'll end the call there, Bram. But look, thanks so much for your time, and I'll follow up with a few emails, maybe some CV advice that I can give guys that you've got coming in and stuff like that.
Of course.
Perfect. All right, Bram. Thanks so much. Take care of yourself.
Thank you, and thank you for supporting the veteran community.
No problem. Thank you so much. Take care. Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.